There have been chaotic scenes once again in Melbourne. For a third day in a row, protesters have defied police and gathered in the city before the standoff boiled over at the Shrine of Remembrance late this afternoon. Ben Knight has the story.
It's been another long and difficult day in the Victorian capital. Yesterday, thousands marched. Today, it was hundreds and ended in a standoff at the Shrine of Remembrance.
We want you to leave peacefully via St Kilda Road. There's a safe passage off to my right.
But a hard core of protests declined. And so, after an hours-long standoff and 3 days of running battles, police finally moved in.
They're not there to protest, they're there for a fight.
Day 3 of the Melbourne protests began early at the heavily fortified and damaged headquarters of the Construction, Forestry, Mining and Energy Union. Anyone who turned up in high-vis was quickly detained. Some were arrested as police braced for a much bigger group to arrive. But they never came. Instead, marchers followed yesterday's playbook, taking random routes around the city and dodging police until just before midday. Some marchers took shelter in city buildings.
They're shooting.
The crowd was split, but quickly joined up again and began heading for the Shrine of Remembrance.
Let them shoot us on hollow ground. Let them shoot us on hollow ground.
The police line surrounding the shrine grew gradually tighter, with occasional forays into the crowd to pick out protesters for arrest. Many of the marchers are union members, angry at having to choose between a jab and their job. Others are venting frustration after more than 230 days of lockdown in Victoria, and with weeks more to come.
What's happened to any other alternative than pushing the people to the brink?
But there were also signs of nationalist and so-called patriot groups, which have increasingly been choosing the shrine as their place of protest, to the outrage of the RSL.
I cannot comprehend the selfishness of people who had come to this sacred place and do this to Victoria's Shrine of Remembrance.
These people don't even deserve the right to hold the Australian flag. I served for 20 years in our army.
Those events in Melbourne of the protests are very concerning, and that is unacceptable behaviour, and particularly at a time when those in Victoria are dealing with lockdowns and many other stresses.
Victoria is something of a paradox. It's one of the most progressive states in the country and has been ruled by Labor governments for 18 of the past 22 years. But at the same time, it's also been home to some of the most extreme right-wing groups in the nation, culminating in a gathering of neo-Nazis in the Grampians this year.
We are seeing clear signs, and the police are saying this from their intelligence intercepts, of right-wing extremist elements moving in and trying to hijack this. And that is really dangerous.
And every day, the unthinkable seems to happen again. Late this afternoon, a 4-day no-fly zone was declared over Melbourne. Protesters have vowed they will be back on the streets again tomorrow and every day. And so will police. Ben Knight, ABC News.
Norman Hermont has been covering events in Melbourne throughout the day. Norm, what's the latest?
Susie, as Ben mentioned, once that protest was dispersed a few hours ago, some of those protesters did make their way to other parts of the city. We saw footage on social media of a police vehicle with riot police on it in South Melbourne. We know that there's still a heavy police presence in the CBD. Ben did mention that flight ban that was requested by Victoria Police over the centre of Melbourne. We've just heard in the last hour or so that police have decided to reverse that decision. Media organizations will be able to apply for permission to once again have aerial pictures from helicopters over the city. But interestingly, there won't be live feeds. They'll have to delay their feeds by 60 minutes. And the reason for that is, police said the reason they requested that flight control ban was for operational reasons. They believe that protesters have been using those pictures to try and get an idea of police tactics and get ahead of the police. In any event, there will be media helicopters in the air over Melbourne tomorrow if these protests continue, if they're granted permission as well.
Norman Hermont, thank you.